University professor Syed Mohammed Marandi. Professor Marandi, good to have you on the program with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
First off, Donald Trump threatened to destroy an entire civilization. Then he agreed to a ceasefire that considers Tehran's terms all in the same day. What are your thoughts on this dramatic turn of events?
This was a major defeat for the Trump and Netanyahu regimes. And without a doubt, the ceasefire in Lebanon is a part of the agreement. And if the regime, if Netanyahu and the Zionists failed to abide by the agreement, then they're basically sending a message to the entire world that they don't want the globe to have oil and LNG and fertilizers. They are taking the world hostage, and I think the entire world is just going to turn further against this genocidal regime. But this was a major achievement for the Iranian people. It was a major achievement for people across the globe who were supporting the Palestinian people, who were opposing these murderous policies of the United States and the Israeli regime over all these years. And I think it's also a major achievement for BRICS countries, which took a stand, the Russians, the Chinese, and the UN Security Council, obviously. I think that this major miscalculation by Trump, which caused the deaths of many innocent Iranians, showed the limitations of empire.
Professor, you said this is a major defeat for the Trump and Netanyahu regimes, but the White House is insisting this truce is a victory for the United States, neatly fitting into Trump's 4 to 6 week timeline. What do you think is giving Washington that impression? In what way would this be a victory?
The very fact that the 15-point Trump plan, which all came after Trump demanded Iran to submit and to concede defeat at the beginning of the war, where they said that Iran must capitulate. Then later they had, after repeated retreats, they gave this 15-point plan, which Iran rejected. And then Iran gave its own plan, the 10-point plan. Now, of course,
So, John, do you want to say a few words?
The point plan is going to be discussed for weeks and months and maybe years. But the very fact that Trump had to accept the Iranian framework and Iran rejected the American framework shows where the power lies. And it shows that after almost 40 days of murderous warfare, where the United States and its proxies in the region and the Israeli regime all tried to undermine Iran, they couldn't take a square meter of the country, and they could not even move close to taking Iran's enriched uranium, which is it has a legal right to have, nor could it force Iran to change its policy with regards to the Strait of Hormuz. So this was a major capitulation. In fact, as we all know, the oil was flowing, and so was the LNG and the fertilizers before the war. And before the war, Iran did not demand any compensation through fees from the Strait of Hormuz. So Trump brought this upon himself, and I think the world has seen how reckless Zionism is, because the economic crisis that people are beginning to feel across the world, and it's going to get worse, regardless of what happens, because it will take time for things to, the regime allows it. But all of this has been brought about because of Netanyahu, because of what Joe Kent in his resignation letter said when he a Trump appointee, a senior intelligence officer. He said Iran was not a threat, Iran was not pursuing a nuclear weapon, and this war is about the Zionist lobby and the Israeli regime. And so now the world sees that this difficulty, the pain, the misery that's been imposed on due to the Israeli regime and Zionism. And if the Israeli regime does not abide by the ceasefire and continues to kill people in Lebanon, that will impede the normalization of the flow of oil and gas. And that means that the Israeli regime wants to harm the global economy even more.
Professor, this 10-point plan from Tehran would require the U.S. to stop disrupting Iran's uranium enrichment program. And I know Iran is saying that it will require all of those 10 points to be agreed on by the U.S. in order for this war to end. But is that realistic? Do you think does Iran believe that Washington will ever actually agree to that?
For Iran, that's not important. These are the 10 points that are all reasonable. Enrichment is a right of Iran in accordance with the International Atomic Energy Agency. And as I said, even Joe Kent admitted what we've been saying for years: Iran is not pursuing a nuclear weapon. So the United States cannot impose upon Iran that which international law allows. The United States carried out a brutal, murderous war of aggression, and it failed. And if it wants to have peace with Iran, those are the conditions. They're all reasonable. We've not demanded new territory. We've not demanded that we should take the state of Florida. All of our demands are reasonable and in accordance with international law. We have to be compensated for the damage done. If the United States won't do it, their proxies in the region will have to do it. But people have been murdered, infrastructure has been destroyed. Iran did not provoke this war, Iran did not want this war, and the money is going to have to come from someone.
What about the requirement to lift sanctions on Iran? That's been U.S. policy for decades, to sanction Iran. Do you think that's likely to happen, that the U.S. would lift sanctions on the country?
Again, I think that it would be naive for anyone to think that this is over. But what has happened is that there has been a paradigm shift. There's been a sea change in world politics. And we've seen the limits of empire. If the United States wants to enhance its global position, it would abide by these terms and it would remove the sanctions. It's to the benefit of the United States. If it does not do so, then Iran will continue to exist, it will continue to function, and it will continue to thrive, and it will continue to control the Strait of Hormuz, and it will continue to protect its allies across the region.
Trump has called this 10-point plan a basis for negotiations. Now, given Trump's history of going back and forth and changing his mind from day to day, does it indicate that he's not taking Tehran's position seriously?
The Iranians are not going to take anything that comes from the White House seriously at all. Because as you rightly point out, he'll say one thing today, something else tomorrow. One thing in the morning, something else in the afternoon. One thing at the beginning of the paragraph and something else at the end of the paragraph. So nothing that he says is important for us. What is important are the facts on the ground. But at the end of the day, we have our weapons, we have our missiles, we will beef up our capabilities, and we control the Strait of Hormuz. So if Trump pushes for confrontation again, things are going to get worse. The only reason why he accepted this as a framework of negotiations is because the war wasn't going well. If the war is restarted in 2 days or 2 weeks or 2 months from now, it's not going to go well for the United States either. So we'll have to see how things play out. But in any case, whatever happens in the days, weeks, and months ahead, this has been a major achievement for Iran and a major achievement for people across the global majority.
Mm-hmm. Professor Marandi, the Israeli Prime Minister has made it clear the ceasefire with Iran does not apply to Israel's operations in Lebanon. Now, that contradicts what the Pakistani Prime Minister said. He said that it does include Lebanon, the ceasefire. Is that likely to affect negotiations, considering Iran explicitly mentioned an end to the fighting there?
Yes, without a doubt. Without a doubt. The Israeli regime will have to end its murderous attacks on Lebanon, and the conditions of Iran include the Palestinians, the Lebanese, Yemen, the resistance in Iraq, and Iran. All are included. The more Netanyahu resists, the more he's showing the world that he wants them to suffer. He wants the global economy to collapse because of his own murderous and selfish ambitions. every hour that the Israeli regime continues its bloodlust, it's only going to make things worse for itself in the eyes of the global community that's waiting for the energy that they need to have their businesses and economies function.
If Israel does continue to attack Lebanon, how do you see Iran responding?
I think that Iran will ensure that the Israeli regime is forced to accept a ceasefire.
Okay. Can't elaborate on that anymore?
I'm not in a position of authority to make those statements, but this is a condition of Iran. And there's no way that the Iranians are going to allow the Israeli regime to slaughter Palestinians and the Lebanese in the days and weeks and months ahead without paying a very severe price. And we have to remember that the Strait of Hormuz is controlled by Iran, and Iran has countless missiles and drones. Remember at the beginning of the war how the Americans were showing us charts about how Iran is running out of missiles and drones? Well, it's been 40 days now, and Iran has been hammering them day and night. I think everyone has seen that. So we have plenty more to use against our adversaries. And it's not the Iranians who accepted the American 15-point plan. It was the Americans that said we will work on the basis of the 10-point Iranian plan. So obviously, the balance of power has tilted, and that is something that Netanyahu will be forced to recognize.
In terms of the Strait of Hormuz, according to Trump's posts, passage through the strait will be coordinated with Iran's armed forces with due consideration of technological difficulties. What exactly does that mean?
Well, that means the normalization of the passage will take time. And of course, the Americans have destroyed Iran's a lot of radar assets, and they've destroyed a number of ships. And therefore, it's going to take some time for the Iranians to get things arranged and prepared. But also, I think it's indirectly sending a message to the Americans that if there's no ceasefire in Lebanon, if Palestinians are killed, then the passage of ships through the Strait of Hormuz may take longer than you would want.
Okay. We're going to leave it there. Tehran University Professor Syed Mohammed Marandi. Professor Marandi, thank you.
Thank you.